Just get out of your own way and keep pushing.
I'm Malik.
And I'm April.
Welcome to Malik Books. Malik Books was something that I think can serve not only my family and me, but also the community, because I want to make a difference and a change in the community by using books, because books change me for the better.
Malik Books give voice to the voiceless.
My grandma walked the streets night and day. When I went to USC, that was the only money I had once a month. She sent me by selling sweet potato pies and KDDs.
Every time I would see her or talk to her, even on the phone, I would cry. It's just words of wisdom that comes out.
She has so many kids that love her because she just had a soul that was so loving. That kind of gave birth to the Crusader Praise Scott Scholarship Fund. I was a sprinter, so I've had junior Olympic champions. I've set national records in track and field. I also was a former Olympian in 1984. Whether it was track, whether it was Malik Books, they all kind of coincide with each other. I just love helping people. We're an African-American independent bookstore that we carry a very large, diverse, and cultural children's book selection, because here at Malik, we believe children are 100% of our future.
We know that the self-esteem grows from here, not here, and that's very important.
You can find a whole different world in books. Today, there's not that many bookstores, so people thank us for being an independent bookstore in the community and taking a chance. Well, the Crusader Praise Scholarship Fund has given over, in the last 5 years, 18 scholarships to freshmen entering college. And the purpose of the scholarship fund is just to help serve those in need. Malik Books is just an extension of our community. What brings me joy is to see someone feel joy from the work that we're doing.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to Meet the Author Live here at Malik Books in Culver City, California. My name is Channing, and it's so good to see everyone this evening. Thank you for joining us. Today, we have the pleasure of having author Paula Chase. She is joining us all the way here from Maryland. Miss Chase, can you see me?
I can. Hi.
Hello, hello. I'm so excited to have you here this evening to talk about your new book, Keeping It Real. Hello, let me wave to you.
Yes, I'm excited to be here, even if I probably look a little, slow, but it's 10 o'clock on my end, so I'm on the downside of my day.
Not a problem. Totally understand. Guess what? This is just like two friends talking over tea. That's what we're doing, and we're here to discuss Keeping It Real. For those of you who don't know, Keeping It Real debuted in October of this year of 2021, and this is the book. I have it right here, if you all can see it. And this would be a book for teen and young adult readers, okay? Let me share a little bit with you about Paula Chase. She holds a BS in communications from James Madison University. As I stated, she resides in Maryland with her husband, and together they have raised 2 girls.
Yes.
Yes. So, Keeping It Real. What the book is about, it's a powerful exploration of what happens when parents pick and choose what they shield their children from. Timely and memorable, Paula Chase's Black character-driven story touches on creativity, art, fashion, and music. A great choice for tween and teen readers stuck between traditional middle grade and adult novels. Tell me about that. What inspired you to write Keeping It Real?
At the heart of it, I've been writing for young readers now since about 2007. My first novel debuted in 2007. And I'm always looking to reflect and represent Black children, especially Black children that maybe don't see themselves in fiction as often. Publishing does have a tendency to use certain aspects of Black life as a crutch. It's what we're used to seeing. But my stories are usually featuring suburban Black kids, upper middle class, working class, but usually suburbs. And Keeping It Real was my opportunity to really explore the upper income side and the dynamics
Perfect. And I like the fact that you said that. Something I was reading, you were saying that you don't always want to focus on the struggle, right? And sometimes
Yeah.
that's so highlighted. The Black experience is always the struggle. But guess what? There are African Americans living in, how can I say it, different income brackets. And there's an experience there. And I feel that's what you're trying to bring out in keeping it real.
I am. And, there, especially lately, we've been talking a lot in the literary community about, joy as resistance and the
Hmm.
portrayal of Black joy as resistance, because we are often put in a single lane. And it's great to have stories about adversity. I mean, even in joy, you're probably going to have some adversity. But the depiction of my characters is really just being Black while a teen. Like it's
Hmm.
just everyday life. There's no, fancy hook there. There's no, there's nothing fantastic about it. It's really just depicting our lives and watching these characters try to figure their way out, navigate their way through being a teenager and family dynamics.
Hmm. I love the fact that you said that. It's just about being a teen. And that's the thing. Beyond color, teenagers are just teenagers at the end of the day. And there is an
Always.
experience there.
Exactly. I mean, there's this term that's used often when describing books like, oh, it's so universal. And yet, and still, our books tend to be put into one tiny little category. We're universal and yet we're not. But all teenagers experience friendship drama,
Mm.
friendships at a crossroads, trying to be comfortable in their own skin. And my books usually tackle that. Keeping It Real in particular is very much about being in that space where you are one way at school
Hmm.
and you're another way around your friends and your family. And in this case, Marigold is she goes to a private school, a very, uppity private school. And to the kids at her private school, she has to deal with like the microaggressions where they're like, oh, assuming that her parents are wealthy because they sold drugs, little stupid stuff like that. But
Hmm.
to the Black kids, they tease her because she talks too proper, and they make assumptions about the fact that her family is rich. So it's really kind of her feeling like she doesn't belong in either world completely.
Hmm. Thank you for explaining that. Now I want to get into some of these characters, right? I want you to tell me a little bit about Marigold Johnson, affectionately known as, or AKA, Mari. And then we also have Justice and Cara, and we've got Miss Sadie. So tell me a little bit about these characters.
So it's actually Mary, but she is so all right. In my mind, Mary is very confident, because she has been raised by her parents who are super busy all the time. And so Miss Sadie is her, what I call her play grandmother. Miss Sadie has raised Mary's father, and she lives with them. And she's the moral center of the story because she's there to kind of pull the characters back when they get too ahead of themselves. But she really is confident just because she has to have a tough skin dealing with being one of only 5 Black people at her school. But having Miss Sadie remind her, you're still just everyday people.
Hmm.
And so I love Mary because she's confident, but yet has that same insecurity that other teenagers do when she's going on 14. They're going into their freshman year of high school,
Hmm.
and so she has a lot of insecurities about wanting to be accepted by Justice, and she also has a crush on Justice.
Absolutely, yes. Those puppy loves or those little crushes. And I love how you incorporate that because sometimes, maybe with teenage fiction, or let's say books for Black teen or young adult readers, we don't always get the crush. Teens have crushes. That's just a part of life. It doesn't matter where you are, what school you go to, how much money your parents make. It's just going to happen. So I really
Oh,
like that.
absolutely. And because this is more of an upper middle grade / young adult, it is just that. You're not going to get into the heavy, graphic detail
Mhm.
about dating or anything like that. It's literally just about, how do you, when you feel some way about somebody and wondering whether or not that feeling is returned and that kind of thing.
Absolutely. And tell me a little bit about Kara.
So she comes into the story, and Mary can tell right away that she doesn't like her, that there is some tension there, and she isn't sure why. She just met. I think all of us have probably experienced that either as teens or as adults, where there's just somebody you just don't vibe with, and they don't vibe. But without giving spoilers away, we find out eventually why Kara does not like her, and it's a fairly legitimate reason. Mm-hmm. But in the midst of the story, we see that she is. If I'm saying that Mary is confident, Kara is 3 times as confident in Mary's mind anyway. She just feels like, wow, nothing seems to shake her, and she finds herself having to be very almost assertive, trying not to be afraid of Kara. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to portray someone like Kara because even though what the reader sees is this very confident person who can flip off, sarcasm and dry wit, I did want to show that is coming from it's coming from something. It's been driven by something. Mm-hmm. And so to build some empathy for that character in her situation.
Absolutely. A couple of things, something very interesting. I was reading in the book. In the very back, there's a comment that says, I guess that Mary is learning, even though sometimes doing the right thing. I don't want to misquote it. I have it outlined. So let me just go back. I think it's learning from her parents that everything done for the right reasons isn't always right. Right?
Yes. And it's the kind of thing where one of the things that I think sometimes people misunderstand about children's books mm-hmm. is they think it's an entry level, like, oh, you write for children and one day you might grow up and write for adults. No, I write for children because I love looking at the world through the lens of a younger reader because they live in the same world that we do. Mm-hmm. And unfortunately, especially for Black kids, they tend to have a smaller period of innocence than non-Black kids. And we see that in this situation when Mary really comes to realize that the things that she knew and thought about her life are not what she expected. Mm-hmm. And that's where that statement comes from, is that her parents think that they're doing the right thing in this situation, but it ends up hurting her more. And also by them doing what they did, they put her in a very awkward position. She's navigating the world with only half the information. And so, that's where that comes from, is that's the backlash of, the parents making these decisions on their own.
Thank you for that. Something I was reading, and I think it's, goodness, I have it right here. It was on the tip of my tongue. I like how you said that Black children have a shorter period of innocence, which is very true. And I think I was reading somewhere in terms of what parents tend to shield, that's where it's coming back to me, what they tend to shield their children from. And with Mary being in private school, I think that parents, Black parents specifically, they do it for a reason, right? They want their kids to be educated. We want to shield them from certain things. We don't want them to be hurt or whatever the case is. But then, like you said, there's another part of the story, and the other part of the story isn't always so bad.
Yeah. It's so, that's just an instinct as a parent to shield your kids from hurt or pain or something that you might feel is too complex for them to understand. In the case of Marigold and her parents, though, once you find out what they're keeping from her, it's also selfish. They did it for very selfish reasons. And sometimes parents shield you for very selfish reasons, whether it's because, they can't explain it, or they're embarrassed, or, they're like, well, I made that mistake and I don't want you to make it. So rather than explain the mistake to you, I'm just going to hope you never find out, and that I can continue to nurture you in the right direction. And what we find in this book is that wasn't the right, that wasn't the right path, because obviously she was going to find out eventually. Things were going to come to a head eventually. So yeah, you can do everything for the right reason and it still backfire.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I hear you there. And just, looking through the book and then also just reading a couple of things, something that kind of stuck with me. I'm a product of private school. And so I know that my mother did it for the right reason. She wanted me to get an education. She wanted certain things. But on the other side of that, I noticed when I hit the 8th grade, she said, okay, now it's time for some real world experience. That's what happened. And the private school I went to was predominantly Asian. So you have predominantly Asian, have some Caucasian kids, some Hispanic kids, and I could count how many kids look like me. You know what I mean? That's what it was. And it really came down to, when I asked my mom why she did it, she said, Channing, you needed to learn how to be around your own people. Okay. And she's like, let's just be honest. Entering high school, when dances came up or certain things, she said, at that time, was a little Asian boy really going to ask you to the dance? Were his parents going to let him do that?
Right.
She had to keep it real at a certain point. She's like, this is just what it is. And pulling me out and putting me in public school, I mean, it just blew my mind.
Right. I'm like, culture shock.
It was a huge culture shock. People were like, is your mom okay? I can't believe she's doing this. But, but I had to learn to navigate. She didn't just send me out there just on my own. She knew the principal. So she had talked to the principal. She, had taken me up there. I literally knew no one. So that's why this book kind of resonates with me. I would definitely, parents and teens and tweens who are in private school and who may be considering making that transition, pick up the book. It's extremely helpful. I've been there myself, and I didn't have any books or anything at that time to help me. It was just, you're going to go to public school and this is what's going to happen.
And I think that's, a really great analogy, because I think that the paths are very parallel, because although Mary isn't being put into public school, her doing this summer program is her transition. Like, you went to a public school. This is her transition, where she now is going to be doing this internship, with several other teenagers who are all from working class neighborhoods, and they're neighborhoods that, like, her parents this is where they grew up. They grew up in these kind of neighborhoods. So they very much want to give back, to the community and the type of communities that they grew up in. However, as much as they want Mary to be steeped in the real world, they're concerned, because they're like, I don't know, we don't want you to, kind of mess up their experience. And of course, they're worried about how she's going to fit in. But yeah, it's a complete and total culture shock, except she has justice. She has that one kind of guide with her who she thinks, well, it's going to be fine because Justice and I already know each other. But immediately, Justice is like, not interested in that, because, he is interested in immersing himself into the experience. And he's not, it's like he's not worried about holding Mary's hand through the experience.
Absolutely. One thing I want to talk about is this summer program. I noticed how you wove in art and music and fashion into the book, normal teenage things. Tell me about that and why you did it.
Well, in all of my books, the characters are going to be active in something. Usually it's a sport, or it's dance, or it's theater. So this was an opportunity for me to do something really different. And there was a lot of aspirational kind of fairy dust in this book, in that I wanted to show that very early on, teenagers are interested in stuff, and they have talent and skills. And it's funny to me that we seem to think that you have to wait until you're 18, 19, 20 to be put into a work environment and test those skills. So that's what I wanted to do. I wanted them to do this trainee program. You can't really call it an internship, but I wanted them to do this trainee program because I am a big proponent of nurturing when someone has an interest in something. And these kids have an interest in fashion, they have an interest in styling. And the trainee program is an opportunity for them to really nurture those skills and hone them, so that maybe one day, if they're really interested in it, they already have a little bit of background and understand how real organizations work. So I wanted to put them in that, but it's still a safe space because it's Mary's parents own the company,
Exactly.
So they're not going to be too hard on them.
Exactly. I was going to mention that too. Something you just said, fairy dust. I like that. That's not a word that I hear often associated maybe with let's see, Black children, Black teens. There is no fairy dust. And something I was reading that said, when Black parents more so want their kids to read to learn a lesson, there's something else behind this, opposed to just reading to experience the fairy dust, the magic of being a teenager or a tween or a young adult.
And I really, that's really been a part of my mission since I've begun my journey with writing. And that is to encourage parents to, let their kids have choice in what they read. The whole idea of a lesson assumes that a story has to have a hardcore, and in the end, this is what you should have learned. When you learn by experience, you learn by watching someone else's experience. And that's all books are, whether it's fiction or nonfiction. And like you said, the fairy dust is important to me because I have always used books to escape. Now, whether I'm escaping into realistic fiction, which is the type of books that I write, whether I'm escaping into realistic fiction or sci-fi, it doesn't matter. I am escaping where I am into this other world. And the worlds that I try to create, I want kids to be able to visualize themselves. How cool would it be to have, work at styling celebrities? They get to style a celebrity, in the book, and they get to learn about the fashion industry, which means that some adult is taking their potential seriously. And that's all it's about. It's for a kid to see that someone can take that one little dream they have serious enough to invest time into them. And that's all that the trainee program is. So, in terms of learning a lesson, I don't know what they would learn from this, but I do know that they would walk away from the story having been taken on a ride with these characters. So they're going to come out more empathetic in the end because they're going to side with somebody in this story. They're going to side with Mary or Kara or Justice. They're going to side with somebody, and it's going to make them more empathetic to other people's situation.
I like how you said that. And even though there isn't a core, like you were saying, lesson, this is what you're going to learn, there is a lesson to learn in the book. Empathy, learning about others, right? You literally have teens who are coming from, how can I say it, two sides of the tracks.
Yeah.
That's just what it is. Teens can have internship programs. I was a part of an internship program. You're meeting different people, you know? So you just never know.
You don't. And there, when I with my debut, it was a real shock to me, the number of parents that I ran into who, I would go into to do store visits, and I'd be standing there, and a parent would come in, and they would, they'd be by themselves. They wouldn't have their child with them. And I would say, do you have any young readers in your life? And they're like, oh, yeah, I have a niece, or I have a daughter, or whatever. And I'm like, well, consider my book. This is about blah, blah, blah. And I, talk about it. And they'd always get this look on their face like, And they're like, well, no, I really prefer for them to read, I'd prefer for them to read a book that has a little bit more, to it. And I'm thinking, but are they reading? Because see, that's the flip side of it. As a parent, you may want your child to read something more educational, but they're in school 6 hours a day. At what point do they get to turn their brain off and, read for fun? And that's kind of the rub, is that I expect publishing to make me invisible as a suburban Black person. I didn't expect for other Black people to make me invisible by only wanting their kid to read one type of book.
It's so funny that you say that. I didn't even think about that, because there are different series, right? I'm a millennial. Boxcar Kids, The Babysitter's Club, American Girls. Parents would, I don't know, I went to private school, but parents will buy, oh, well, let's buy these books. We just want our kids to read. Well, then what's the difference? This is a series that's all escapism. Exactly. Babysitter's Club never existed. Yes, I tried to create one myself, but I admit it, we didn't have any kids to babysit, but we had a club, we had that. But what's wrong with that? What's wrong with these Black characters being here, and they're in this training program? You never know where a teen could take that.
Exactly.
It may propel them to, I want to go and I want to pursue an internship, or, let me talk with my teacher, or let me do so. You never, ever know.
You don't. And I also, I think we're starting to let up on that a little bit, because there are so many more books. But sometimes sometimes Black readers are labeled as reluctant readers. And I rebuke that term every time I hear it, because to label a child a reluctant reader puts the onus on the child instead of the people around the child who helps them have access to books. Many of the times when our readers aren't interested in books, it is because they don't see something that reflects something that they want to see, whether it's an actual mirror of exactly how they live in their situation, or if it's just that if I am actually from an inner city and I live, in a certain neighborhood and I see certain things all the time, why would one assume that I always want to read that same story? Like I might want to read about something completely different just to escape that environment. So all I'm saying is, ask kids what they want to read. They'll tell you, and then you try to find a book that's out there that matches what they're looking for. But this notion that you're going to force a book on a child doesn't work. If they're not interested, they just won't read it. And it's why we tend to lose them around middle school, because at this point, it no longer is enjoyable for them.
You made a very good point. Escapism, and what is it that the child or the teen wants to read? Think about it. Babysitter's Club, it was escapism. We all wanted a Babysitter's Club. We all wanted to have those adventures that they had. Why can't we have adventures with Mari and Justice and Kara and Miss Sadie? That's right. All that was.
Exactly. Just go down the rabbit hole with them. It's just as much fun.
That's all it is. There were no kids in my neighborhood babysitting and having all these great adventures, but my goodness, it was so good to read about it, So why can't we have the same thing here? And I love the fairy dust. So a couple of things, I'm going to open this up for viewers. If you have any questions, because we're winding down, feel free to type them in the comment section, and Paula will be able to answer them for you. I want to say thank you so much, Avery Johnson. We appreciate that. Thank you. Also, thank you to Mary Ann Delois, I think. Thank you very much. If there's any questions, I'm just going to open it up. And then while we're waiting for any questions to come through, I just love the fact how you said the books that you're writing, you're using them as a springboard for tough discussions between young readers and adults. Books can be used to discuss issues such as family secrets, classism, cultural code switching, and defining Blackness by income. I love the fact that you said that.
And that's, and that's all combined and keeping it real. It's always hard to break down what a book is about, because I feel like reading and finding a book is a very intimate experience. As a kid, I loved nothing more than going into a bookstore, picking up a book and just sitting on the floor and just kind of, reading right then and there. And I didn't need anybody to hand sell it to me. I would just look myself. So I consider it a very intimate experience. It's tough for me as a writer to say, when someone says, well, what is your book about? Because then that breaks the book down into these little chunks. And therefore you're like, well, I didn't like that chunk, and that chunk didn't sound interesting. And that's not how, that's not how a book works, right? It's all these things, and it's a more. So even though I deal with, and I purposely deal with, some complex issues in my book, they're always told from the perspective of a very young reader, which means that it's going to be wrapped in drama. It's going to be wrapped in teen angst. And it's always going to be wrapped in some sort of talent, skill, or activity that they have a passion for. So it's a lot more fun than it may sound when we start talking about the heavy issues.
Absolutely. And as I don't see any questions as of yet, but in closing, what would you like to leave with parents and with young readers? What would you like for them to take away from this chat and keeping it real?
Yeah, I really encourage parents out there, or just people who have young readers in their life, to please allow reader choice. Allow your readers to explore. There are so many more books out there that feature Black characters now in so many different situations, and our ability to get those into their hands means that we're going to nurture lifelong readers. Once someone finds the one book that they like, they're going to be more willing to go back in and look for another, and then we've got them for life.
Thank you so much for saying that. And where can readers and viewers find you?
You can find me on my website, paulachasebooks.com. And I'm also pretty active on Twitter, and my handle is that MG Book Chick. And on Instagram, I'm that Paula Chase.
Perfect. Thank you so much. And then also, Keeping It Real. Here's the book. Here it is. Keeping It Real can be found at malikbooks.com. That's MALIKBOOKS.com. Also, feel free to come in and visit us here in Culver City, California. We're located inside of the Westfield Mall. And also, there's a Baldwin Hills location. So both locations carry the book, or order it online. And okay, perfect. I just got a question. They're going to ask how to purchase the book. Well, that's how you can purchase the book. And feel free to reach out to Paula Chase, reach out to Malik Books, and we look forward to seeing everyone soon. And please pick up this book and allow your child to experience the fairy dust. They need it, no matter what color they are. And Paula, I can feel your passion for writing for teens and tweens. I can really feel it in young adults through the screen. So thank you so much for your imagination, your ingenuity, and your creativity. I appreciate it. Thank you for joining us on Meet the Author Live.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. My name is Channing, and I can be found on Instagram at ChanBardo, Chan Bardo. Thank you so much, and we'll see you all soon. Thank you, Paula. It's been a pleasure.
Good night.
Good night.